Let's say you're in a forest and the lighting is all green. What are you gonna do? So there's basically three things your camera needs to get right. Exposure, is it too light or dark? Is it in focus? And what's the color? If your color's not right, then it might not look too good. So right now, these lights are kind of daylightish. They're LEDs. They're around 5500. And I have the camera set in tungsten at 3200. So it looks really blue. If I use tungsten lighting, do I look more normal now? So this is tungsten light. This is balanced for 3200 and now it looks normal. This is indoor lighting. This is generally what indoor lighting is. It's kind of orangey. Now, here's where it gets kind of tricky. One method of white balance that some people have suggested is where you have this frosty thing you put over your lens, and then that kind of gives you a reading of the ambient light all around you. There's also a prism type thing where it's got little facets that kind of gets the light from all around. I'll tell you why this doesn't work. This is assuming that the light is the same everywhere, but it's usually never is. Like right now, I've got a 3200 light here. Let's say you have a window with sunlight coming in, which is bluish light. That's 5600. This is a daylight bulb. And that's bluish light. The orange light is not going into the lens. The blue light is going into the lens. So if you put this over the lens and you take a white balance reading, this is what you get. It's too orange. Why? Because the camera, this thing, was picking up the blue light. Blue light's going into this reflector. That light's not hitting this. So that's why these things don't work. You don't want to take an ambient reading of whatever's in the air because you've got orange light going in this direction and blue light going in this direction. And that happens a lot in real life. You've got different colors of light coming from all different directions. So what you need to do for white balance is you need to take a white balance reading right where the face is. Be this one. Where's it? This one here. That's where you want to take the white balance reading. More and more light sources are LEDs nowadays, and they're getting better at the actual light values of white balance. So if you have a trusted light source that you use a lot for your lighting, like Aputure or Godox or something like that, and it's set for daylight, you can often just set your camera to daylight, and it's probably going to be pretty good. And if you're outside in bright sunlight, you can set it on sunlight and it's pretty good. The tricky part is when you have light that's coming from different directions, or you're in shade, or you're indoors, or you have, a wall bouncing light, or you're in a forest, or especially indoors. Indoors, the lighting is all over the place. You've got a little warm spot here, a cool spot there. You've got different light directions coming from all sides. So that's where you should measure the white balance and do it manually. And that's where you can, now I know people say shoot it in RAW, fix it later. Look, I don't do that. I want to get it right in the camera right away and be done. And then I'm done with I can get on with my life. I don't fix things in post. That is so not me to have to spend all the rest of my life just trying to fix things that I did when I shot it. Get it right in the first place. I shoot JPEGs, I don't shoot RAW, and I'm telling you how you can, isn't it great to just shoot something and it's done and you just feel good, like it's done, like took 2 seconds? All right, you've got these things here, these collapsible things. They come in different sizes. This is not neutral gray. It's pretty close, but it's not real neutral gray. It can actually change color based on temperature and lighting and conditions, or the printing inks that they use. This is not pure white. This is actually kind of, this is a warmer light. White, so don't ever use this. This is actually made for exposure, not for white balance. This is for setting your exposure properly so you're not too light or too dark. I'll get that in the next video. You can use this, and I've used this before, and in a pinch, if you have nothing else, this will work. Just realize it's not going to be perfect. This is not neutral gray. You can use it, okay, but there are better things, and that's what I'm talking about here. Most of these are made for post work. In other words, when you're doing a video or taking a picture, you have the person hold this in front of their face before you do your photo shoot or your video, and then later on you go into your editing software and you use your calibration stuff for getting the colors and the exposure right based on this thing. I use these things for getting it right before I do my photo shoot, and I actually use these as my white balance and everything. And it's good to always have this as a backup in case something does screw up. You can fix it in post if you do have a shot of this. But what I do is I zoom in on just the gray part here, and I only do like these couple here. That's all I do is I zoom in on that and I take my white balance on just the grays, and that works pretty good. This is a pretty good company, dgkcolortools.com. They have different kinds here. Don't ever get the cheaper ones. The cheaper ones are shiny. See how this is shiny? You don't want shiny because then you're going to get the reading's just not going to be here. Always get the more expensive ones, which are flat. So no matter what angle you put this in, you're not going to get any shine or color casting on it. So this is the way to go. They also have this one, which looks really kind of weird at first to you. Like, that's not really gray. That looks kind of greenish. Like, why is this color so weird? This is actually an underwater white balance color chart. If you're a diver and you go underwater and stuff, it's the same company. Now we're getting onto these ones. These are the ones you're starting to see a lot of on the internet nowadays. These are not cheap. These are little pocket things that you put in your pocket, and then you open it up, and it has color charts. It has gray, black, and white, and it has a white balance card and a focus chart. This is the one you want to focus on right here. Now, this is not pure white. The way the camera works to get white balance, normally if you put it in auto, it looks for something that's white, the whitest thing it can find in the picture, and it bases its assumption of color correction on that. A lot of times pure white is an overexposed part of the sky or something, a white wall where there's just too much light and it's just overexposed. And that throws everything off because let's say, for example, the brightest part is a window, okay? You've got something outside, sunlight, and it's all bluish color, but you're indoors and you're kind of in an orangey light. So the camera's going to think that everything is bluish, but it's not because the brightest part is actually outside the window. So you can't go on auto. I would never trust auto white balance on a camera. I mean, if you can help it, because it's just going to, the lightest part of the picture is usually not the correct color anyway. And then of course, clipping, once something is clipped, then you're not going to be able to get a good reading. And so that's why when you have a white thing here, a white balance, this isn't pure white. This is actually a little bit darker than pure white. This is kind of like a very light gray. And this is what you do your white balance on. Now, how dependable are these? Well, they're pretty good. I mean, this one here is actually one you don't want. This is a Datacolor Spider Checker. See how this is shiny? I don't know why they made that shiny. Why the hell is that shiny? You're going to get an off reading with that. Whereas this one is matte. This is a Color Checker Passport by Calibrite. Look at that. No matter which angle you put it in, there's no shine. Why they made shiny on here is beyond me. I know your blacks get blacker when you have shiny, but then you get the midtones and the highlights get thrown off from the lights that are hitting it and reflecting on the highlights. So I don't really like this one. I like this one here. This is a Color Checker Passport by Calibrite. The thing I don't like about it is they're really hard to open and close. It's like, why do they make this so hard to open? I feel like I'm going to break it. You know, and then you stick your finger on there and you get fingerprints on the things which you're not supposed to touch, which screws up the acids in your finger, screw up the color things. But this is like trying to open this is like, why don't they just make it normal, like just flap it open? But anyway, this is pretty good. So what you do is you'll have the person hold this in front of their face. You zoom in really close on this and you get your white balance reading. I'll show you how easy it is to do a white balance reading in a second here. There's even little things like this that are kind of cute. Always go for the flat color thing. Anything that's a flat matte color. This is by Lumina. That's kind of cute. And then there's this thing by Spider. This is a Spider Cube. This is something, there's videos on how to do this. You hold this in the shot and there's a white balance. Now notice there's different sides of the gray. You've got a shadow side and a highlight side. There might be blue light coming from this side and orange light coming from this side, or pink or green or yellow. So this kind of takes the average of that. And then you have a hole there, which is the blackest black you can get. And then you've got the shiny thing here, which gets the highlight with the brightest highlight you can get. So this is used mainly for post work. Most of this stuff is for doing post work. I like to get it right before I do it. The easiest way to do that is a piece of white paper. Now, I know some people go, oh, it's going to clip and stuff. No, it won't. This is not pure white. This is actually, if this was pure white, it would be glowing. This would be an LED panel that's glowing. This is not pure white. Some people think that they add dyes to this to make it more whitish white. I actually found this to be pretty darn close. And I know there's different paper companies that have different colors of paper, but I find this is not pure white. And this is not bluish. This is actually pretty darn close. You can test it yourself like I did. Look at this. After white balancing the camera with white paper, the vector scope is a perfect pin dot. Look at that. And on the RGB parade, red, green, and blue are perfect. It's so easy to just get a white piece of paper and hold it in front of you, take a white balance reading, and not in front of the camera. Always have it in front of the person. So that's the way I do it. Paper can be folded up really easy and put in your pocket. And that gets to my next thing. The best thing is not a flat piece of white paper. It's a crumpled piece of white paper. Now, why is this better? I'll tell you why. Because you have all these different angles here of paper reflecting all kinds of different, whatever the ambient colors are right here are reflected. So you're not getting, see, if you're holding a piece of paper, that's something that's flat, and the light's coming from one direction and you're not holding it just the right angle, you might be getting an off reading. This thing is getting readings from 100 different angles. So you're getting a good average of what's going on in front of the person's face when you zoom in on white paper. This costs a penny. This is so cheap, So crinkle up your paper so you can get all the different angles hitting it right in front of the person's face, and you get a good average of it. And that's another issue is, what if you have green light coming from this side and orangey light coming from this side and blue light coming from this side? You can't, all you can really do is take the average of that. You can't really, unless there's a main one that you want to choose as your, let's say 3/4 of the light hitting the person is a bluish light, then you should favor the bluish light and have the angle of the thing that you're using or reading aiming at the bluish light and not the greenish light. So this thing gets a good average of it. So crumpled white paper, I think, is the best. Let me show you how easy it is to get a white balance reading. If you have a Canon camera, especially a consumer camera, I'm sorry, you've got the worst of the worst. They make you take a picture. You have to take a picture of something that's pure white. You have to fill the screen with it. Then you have to go into the menu and you got to go through 3 different settings. Then you have to take a white balance reading of the picture that you just took. It takes like a minute to do a stupid white balance, and by then your shot's gone. These other cameras, cinema cameras don't have that. You just have a white balance button. You push and then you get an instant reading. But other companies like Sony and Panasonic, it's so easy. Check this out. Okay, here we have a Panasonic camera. All Panasonic cameras have this. You see the dial on the back here? See where it says white balance? It's just, you just push on that, you get your preset, or in this case, I'm going to go to a choose your own custom white balance. You push up, see the square, and then you just take a white balance reading and you're done. That's how easy that is with a Panasonic camera. Sony's got something very similar. You just go to your function button and then you go to your presets, or you do a custom one, in which case you just push the button to the right, you push set, and then you put the square. You see the little square? You don't have to fill the whole screen. You just get your white part in that square and you push that and you're done. So these things here are so easy. Look here's another Panasonic camera. Got the white balance button right there on the side. This is so easy when you have these kind of cameras. It takes literally seconds to do a white balance, and you should always do that because it's so much easier to get it right when you're shooting the thing rather than having to fix it later on. And RAW is not the answer for everything. You can't fix everything in RAW. It's like that's a big myth. Get it right. Start shooting with JPEG so you can learn the hard way how to do it right. And then also you're saving yourself the time because you got it done. That's my white balance thing. I just use a crumpled piece of white paper. That's just what I do. Do whatever you want. And I'm going to get into exposure next, how to nail the proper exposure in a camera in the next video. That's equally important. How do you get it to not be too dark or too light? All right. Hope you learned something. I'll see you in the next video.